All right, guys, this video, I'm going to share with you my exact subdividing strategy that we use in our land business. And this is the exact strategy that we've used to land multiple deals that have netted us over 6 figures in profit. It's pretty awesome. I think you guys are going to love it. Let's jump into the computer and I'll show you the exact step-by-step process that we use.
All right, here we are. How to land 6-figure subdivide land deals. Pretty excited to share this with y'all. I've never put this on YouTube before. I'm giving it all away. So if you like this, give it a thumbs up. It means the world. It tells me that I should make more videos like this. So please give me a thumbs up if you like it. If you hate it, that's fine. Don't give it a thumbs up. I would never want you to do that, okay? So we're going to go through. I'll show you guys a recent deal. We'll look at all of it. I'll show you guys the contracts and the survey and all the ins and outs. And I'm going to show you guys how you can duplicate this strategy in your own land business. It's pretty exciting. Let's check it out. So here's a beautiful 40-acre piece that we picked up here. It's awesome. It's got all the subdivided characteristics that we look for. We chopped it up into 4 separate lots, each of them obviously being 10 acres. You can see here, this has got double-sided road frontage. We've sold 2 out of the 4 so far. I'll show you the exact amount that we've made so far. And I'll review our thinking behind this deal, why we chose to subdivide this instead of flipping it. Now, what's interesting is here's the contract. We picked it up for $121,000. We actually had the right to double close or assign this deal if we wanted to. We controlled it with a $100 earnest money deposit. You see that we control this property up until the 20th of December. So initially this was going to be a double close flip for us. We quickly realized, you know what? I think this is going to be better suited for a subdivide. And I'll tell you guys why we chose to do that. So here's the property as it sits right here. Okay. There's really a couple things that I look for when we're thinking about subdividing land. First, I think about, am I in the right state and the right county? I'll talk about that here in a second. The next thing that I have to figure out is how much road frontage do I have, or do I have enough road frontage? I am not personally in the business of creating roads or doing all of that. There might be a time and place for it. Thus far, I've never ventured into that arena. I like to keep it really, really simple. The next thing I think about is the topography. Then I think about flood zones and wetlands, and then I might think about utilities in some cases. Now, for slope, you got to be careful, right? When we think about topography, I want to make sure that the child lots that I'm creating are easy to access. Someone can get to the interior of them. They're very usable. So if you're dealing with a property that's got 20-degree slope or 30-degree slope, that in itself might outweigh a subdivide or might change how you divide up the property. Same thing when it comes to flood zones and wetlands. There's a lot of variables there in terms of how it affects the property. Typically no more than 30, 40, 50% of the property in the flood zones or wetlands. But again, it does come down to how it sits on the property. So this property actually had a little bit of wetlands running over here. Now, if that wetlands or the flood zones was running along the full access point and is intersecting access, maybe it only had 10% flood zones or wetlands, but the fact that it would encroach on access and make it very difficult to get to the interior of the property probably would DQ it for me. So it's not just thinking about the percentages. It also has to come down to how does it affect someone using this property, which looks like how does it affect their access and can they easily get to the interior of the property and can they build on it? Now, the next thing is utilities as well, right? And utilities are going to decide how desirable the property is. You could be chopping up 10-acre ranchettes in the desert, and it might be really hard to move those if they don't have a well or access to municipal water. It's not a deal killer, but it's certainly something to think about. What you're doing here is you're creating a ton of supply. So you want to make sure that in the market that you're creating that supply, people want it. Because the last thing you want to do is sink time, money, energy, effort into doing one of these deals, create a bunch of lots just to realize no one wants to buy them. And now you're sitting on 12 small child lots that no one wants to buy. One of the big things is utilities, because typically we're creating smaller lots here, usually 10 acres and below. And in most cases, these are more like rural infill properties. So if I was selling a 100-acre tract, that might be less of a consideration because the kind of buyer for that is probably not really concerned. It might be a recreational property, a hunting property. But if you're subdividing 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, you really got to be mindful of who is your end user and what is the market wanting. Also, on top of that, in some cases, access to utilities can dictate how small of the lots that we can create are. And in some cases, access to utilities will dictate how low we can go with our child lots. So in some states, in some places, access to municipal water or what have you can dictate how small of the lots that we can create are. So there's a lot to be considered here. So looking at this property, it's got two-sided road frontage. It had plenty of road frontage for us. We could cut it vertical here. We could cut it horizontal here. It was flat. It had very minor wetlands and very minor flood zones. Now here's the survey here for the property. So you guys can see that we created 4 lots, A, B, C, D, all roughly 10 acres or a little bit over 10 acres. And you can see we opted to go for the vertical cuts. Now, if you go back here and you look at it, it's actually very clear as to why we decided to do that. If we had cut horizontally, even though we have maybe a little more road frontage here, the problem is the access here would require some kind of brush hogging for people to get to the interior of the property. Where if we made these vertical cuts, this is all cleared out and pastoral. I'm very mindful of what does it look like when a buyer drives up? And again, can they get to the interior of the property? Whether it's walking or driving a 4x4 on it, there needs to be an easy way for them to do that. So here, this would have really affected the curb appeal of the property. And we probably would have had to spend $2,000 to $2,500 an acre for brush hogging to clear this out. So it made a lot more sense to make these vertical cuts because we already had this open pastoral area and some of them already had kind of these small roads going through them. So we were able to leverage these. The ugly stepchild lot that we have is this guy here, which if you look at this, that's this lot, okay? This one we still have actively listed. We actually had to lower the price on it. Reason being is because it's heavily overgrown. The curb appeal is a lot lower. You can imagine that these middle lots are a lot more attractive because they can drive up and they know exactly what they're looking at. And on top of that has a little bit of wetlands in it. It's not super bad on the maps, but oddly enough, when buyers have gone out there, they say it's way worse than we would expect. But again, there's standing water, it's winter, it's rained, all that stuff. So of course that plays into it. And it's a good reminder that it can certainly be a big discrepancy between the maps that you see with the overlays for flood zones or wetlands and what it actually looks like in real time on the property. When someone drives out to your property and there's standing water on it, even though the wetlands shows a tiny little sliver on the overlay, that can really hurt the value. Now, ironically, that standing water wasn't there when we bought the thing, but it became winter and it was raining a bunch, and it's been harder to sell that lot for that reason. Now, we won't go through all of the marketing and the acquisition stuff. We'll touch on a little bit of it here, but I want to give you guys some context. So this lead was generated into our CRM May 18th, 2024. Contract was signed June 21st, 2024. It currently is February 19th, 2025 when I'm recording this, and we still haven't sold the full deal. So this deal actually materialized a lot faster than what's typical. This is pretty much a 30-day turnaround from when the lead came into our CRM to when the contract was signed. That's rare. That's super rare. That's an outlier. You would typically expect to see 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. Usually these deals take a while to materialize. We just kind of happened upon a motivated seller. In most cases, these take a while. Even once you have the contract signed, though, these deals still often don't happen quickly. You could be looking at 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Hell, you could be looking at 6 months to get a survey done. Then you have to get it recorded, get the new APNs, legal descriptions, then you have to list it, then you have to sell the thing. So in a lot of cases, a simple subdivide like this is at least from cash going in to cash coming in, a 6-month process, and can be upwards of 12 plus months. So don't be fooled that this is just easy money that like it's going to come raining down on you. These are slow moving deals. Now, really what's exciting is you could take a property like this that was probably going to net us 50 to 60 grand as a double close, and we can really force appreciation through the subdividing. So that's what makes it exciting. And in some cases, we can get our basis out of the deal pretty quickly, which we were able to do here. That's exciting as well. But again, these are often slow burns. And when you factor in how long it takes to typically contract these things, they're even slower burns. So let's look at the math here. 40 acres, we created 4 10-acre child lots. For closing costs, all in, we're at $122,000, $486, 6 cents, whatever. I can barely even say it. It's just too many numbers. We paid about $2,500 for the survey. That's actually pretty low. Typically, it's going to be a bit more. I would expect for a property of this size to pay closer to $5 grand to $7 grand, kind of for the entire country. It totally ranges by state, by county, by how busy they are. It really is a who, not how game. I've been quoted 12 grand to survey 40 acres, and I've been told it's going to take 6 months. This guy surveyed this in like under 2 weeks, and it was the most affordable survey for a property this size that we've ever had. So first lot pretty much sold immediately within the first 30 days, sold at $89,900. Second lot sold soon after at $85,000. And like I mentioned, we've got 2 additional lots on market right now. One's actually under contract and should be closing here in the next few weeks. And then we've got lot 4 that's still actively listed, okay? I said TBD here. They'll probably sell at about 70 grand. The reason they're going to sell a bit lower is because you have this lot here and this lot here. So these two middle ones got eaten up the fastest and they sold for the most. And that makes sense. Again, think about the curb appeal. Had I subdivided over here and gone horizontal, I would have had a very different experience. All of these would have taken quite a long time to sell. It's crazy how simple just laying out your property in an intelligent fashion, how that can play out in terms of how quickly you sell this stuff and how much you make on it. Truly, this layout probably made us an additional 20 to 30 grand and allowed us to recoup our basis within a few weeks. So expected net at the end of the day is $192,000. We've already pulled all of our cash out of the deal plus some profit. So buy for 122, net 192, and get your cash out of the deal in whatever, a month and a half. Pretty awesome by all things being considered. So how did we stumble upon this, right? Because we talked about picking the right kinds of properties. The next thing when you think about those, were we in the right market? How do we know if we're in the right market? And how the heck do you do this if you want to repeat this process in your business? Well, the easiest thing is to first pull up a political map, okay? This is a political map of the US. I don't know how current it is. I don't know if this is based off the 2024 elections. Things have changed. So whatever. We're going to assume this is somewhat up to date. Typically what you'll find in America is that red states on average have more favorable land use laws, or said another way, they have less land use laws, okay? Once you start going into blue states, typically they have a lot more restrictions for everything that applies to the freedom of your land, okay? You want to think red states, typically more freedom for land ownership, real estate in general. Blue states typically more restrictive. When we're thinking about this strategy, you can pretty much subdivide in any state, right? Well, actually, you certainly can. That's not even really in question. Really, though, it's the path of least resistance. What I'm looking for here is give me the straightest line path with the least amount of work to have the most upside. Could we have figured out a way to take this down to quarter-acre lots? Sure. In my view, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, and that inventory wasn't even in demand in this market. So simply it just doesn't make sense for me. So the selection of the state and the county that you work in to even expose yourself to subdivides is the first thing that we need to answer. If I'm doing deals in California, I'm just simply probably not thinking about a subdivide, because it's going to take a year. There's going to be a lot of red tape. There's going to be a lot of NIMBYs, and it's probably going to cost 5 figures or multiple 5 figures. So this is just kind of an easy guideline that you guys can use. If you want to go deeper, I'll show you guys exactly how to do that. But as a general rule of thumb, red states are going to be a lot more favorable to think about for subdividing. Now, our whole entire subdividing strategy that we use is called exemption-based subdividing, okay? You can think about it like exemptions, minors, majors, right? Minors and majors might require platting. I'm looking for the plat exempt subdivides that have the path of least resistance. Now, there's certainly a time to break into those other categories, but for your first go around, I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you're partnering with someone. And honestly, on average, the reward for these kinds of deals is so sizable that it just makes sense for the amount of cash that we have to sink into it and how quickly we can put this stuff together. More times than not, the exemption-based subdivide just wins. Now, I don't want to scare you off from doing stuff that's more serious. You want to keep your eyes wide open because there are opportunities that absolutely should go the route of a major subdivide. But that's not what we're talking about here. So let's imagine we're in a red state and we want to figure out how the heck do I subdivide this and what are the exemptions? Well, my dear friend, it starts with Google or perhaps even ChatGPT. I am a Neanderthal, so I typically opt to use Google. Let's imagine I'm doing a deal in Wilson County, Texas, okay? My first order of business would be subdivide regulations, Wilson County, Texas. It's that simple. Typically, the first thing that's going to pop up here is the county website. Now, you want to see .state and then .us. You'll get like PDFs hosted on random websites, and it's not to say those aren't the right PDFs, but in a lot of cases, they can be out of date. So this was updated 11th of September, 2023. I'm really looking to go to the county website. You can find all sorts of old riffraff elsewhere. Try to find the county site. It should be very obvious. It should be the first result that pulls up. Now, one thing to look out for is kind of a little meta rule here is usually the length of the regulations is going to tell you how hard it's going to be, okay? So when I come across 97 pages, my first sense is that this is going to be simple-ish, but probably not the simplest, especially if you wanted to break into making improvements or major subdivides. The fewer the pages, the simpler the regulations are, simply put. There are some places out there that are 300 pages long, 600 pages long. It's not to say that there aren't exemptions. It's not to say that I won't subdivide there, but just be warned, you're probably walking into something that might be a little more confusing. Now, there's simply always going to be an easy path that we can take with some form of exemptions. This really starts to apply once you break into more things that are more complex, but it's just a little breadcrumb to look out for. So I pull up this massive PDF. The first thing that I do is I go Command F and I search for exemptions, okay? The first thing that pops up is in this index here, and it shows me the exemptions. It says what is exempt, procedures, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So I'm going to jump down to the what is exempt. I want to go and figure out what can I do here? And you're going to see a lot of stuff where it's like, if you're subdividing land for your child, you can do this. If you're doing it for your uncle, you can do this. If it's a lot split, you can do this. If it's an agricultural property outside of city limits, you can do this, yada, yada, yada. But really what I'm looking for is the stuff that applies to everyone. Okay. So here's what I found. The owner of the tract divides a tract into 2 or more parts, and all of the lots of the subdivision are more than 10 acres in area, and the owner does not lay out a part of the tract described by section 232 blah, 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 Texas Local Government Code. Okay, cool. You'd probably want to go and figure out what this is, the 232.001. But what I can see here right off the bat is, hey, I can take this down to 10 acres and be exempt of the platting requirements as long as I stay in excess of 10 acres. Now, the cool thing here is it says 2 or more parts. So theoretically, I could do infinite cuts as long as I stay above this 10 acres. So I could have 1,000-acre property and make 110-acre tracts without having to go through the platting process. That is a slam dunk, booyah, hell yeah, exactly what I'm looking for. Now, most of these exemptions are going to play off the size of the property or the quantity of child lots you're creating, or both. So in some places you'll see, hey, you can create properties that have to be bigger than 5 acres, but you can't create more than 5 lots or whatever it may be. Oftentimes those can go together. So those are really the things that we're looking out for. Now, typically these exemptions are going to be applicable statewide, but certainly at a county level, things can vary. So it's helpful to know how states operate and what the exemptions are, but you do always want to read between the fine lines for each county. For example, there might be certain counties where you could take it down to 5 acres. You just have to meet certain requirements, and maybe you couldn't do that in different counties. Or there might be counties where, hey, if you're going to cut in a road, you can do it, no problem. It could be a dirt road, could be a gravel road, where the adjacent county says, if you're going to cut in a road, it has to be paved. So you really want to make sure that you understand these for each county that you're working in, but it is helpful to start to understand the macro for every state that you're marketing consistently in. So in the example above, this was a market that we selected through Land Insights, but we've done many deals here. So we were already familiar with the Subdivide regulations. So all we needed to do in this case was find a surveyor, which we did through Google. We called them, we got multiple quotes, we found our realtor, and that's it. If we're avoiding the platting requirements, it's as simple as getting a surveyor, getting a quote, getting a timeline, getting them on the property, recording that survey, getting the new APNs, new legal descriptions, and getting this puppy listed. And that's what we're looking to do here with these exemption-based subdivides. If you guys enjoyed this video, which I hope you did, you're going to absolutely love the Land Investing Accelerated Facebook community. It is free to join. There's so much sauce being given away there. The link is in the description. Come join us, introduce yourself, come hang out. Let's talk shop and do some deals. Cheers.